Hello to all. I'm Liliana Trief, sales representative working for Oracle. Thank you to all for being connecting today to our e-business session. Thank you to Sabine. I have already said it, but she has helped us a lot to organize this session. Thank you to Muannad Obedat for being today our main speaker. He's our vice president for software development team. He will speak to you today about our e-business e-command center, or our ECC as we name it. And we'll have also Nadia Benjedou, one of our vice presidents for the product strategy part. She will help Muannad, if necessary, together with Nashwa Ghazali, to answer to your questions if you'll address them by chat. Or after that, of course, if you need to have more details, you can contact us by email or have other, short call sessions with me, Sabine, Nadia, or Muannad, depending on your needs. So now, if we are all okay, if the connection is good, Muannad, I'll let you present us your part.
Excellent, thanks, Liliana. Hello, everyone. So, as Liliana mentioned, we'll talk today about Enterprise Command Center, or for short, ECC for EBS. So I'll cover what we've done there, the value of the product itself, and I'll talk about our latest release, which is V4 that just came out. And I'll try to do a lot of interactive live demos during the session. So feel free to ask us questions throughout the chat, and then I'll try to leave a few minutes also at the end of the session for additional questions. Just a safe harbor statement, because I may talk about some new features that we're working on for the next release. First of all, I think maybe some of you may already know about Enterprise Command Center. I think Nadia has presented also EBS strategy for the same group, and you probably have seen Enterprise Command Center in a lot of different places in EBS. This is version 4 of the Enterprise Command Center for EBS, came out at the end of March. And everything that you would need to know about ECC v4 you can find from the EBS portal. So if you go to oracle.com/EBS, and we'll share the slides with you guys after the call. If you go there, we have what we call a quick start guide. So if you click on this link, and I have it open already in my browser, it takes you to this document from the EBS portal, and it has all the information that is publicly available for Enterprise Command Center. So how to get started on it when you want to install it from a technical perspective, but also, and more importantly, I guess, details about all the functional content that we have. So we'll come back to this document throughout the slides. Okay, so what is ECC all about? I'll switch in a little bit to a live demo so that it feels a little bit more real to everybody here that's listening to it. The idea is you want to be able to get to the data that you have in your enterprise system in an interactive way. You want to be able to go to the system. Maybe you're responsible for a manufacturing production line. Maybe you're responsible for renewing service contracts for your customers, handling service requests, paying bills on time, collecting money that your customers owe you. So you may be in different places in the organization, and you're using a particular functional area within eBusiness Suite to handle that capability. So you have a lot of data that is being tracked in the transactional system, and you want the ability to go into the transactional system and the system to guide you into the areas of importance or areas that require maybe some focus for you, and be able to see that information in a dashboard or landing page, whatever you want to call it, and then have the system highlight any audits, exceptions, important metrics about that functional area that you're responsible for, and then allow you to freely navigate through the data based on whatever makes business sense for you during that particular interaction. So in one case, maybe you're responding to an escalation that's coming from a customer, maybe you're responding to a business event, or maybe you're just doing your day-to-day activities in the system, like, for example, paying supplier bills and open invoices and things like that. So ECC tries to provide that interactive, responsive experience of information visualization, and at the same time, the ability to give you the information discovery aspect of things, where you can navigate through the data based on whatever additional area of focus you want to spend your time and effort on for that business transaction. And all of that is done in a embedded experience within eBusiness Suite. So while we provided new technology to enable that, that technology sits within the system of EBS and it's embedded in the same user experience. So let me switch to live demo of this. Okay, let me just go back here. Okay, so this is a demo environment built on EBS 12.2. So I'm going to log in as an EBS user. So if you're not familiar with this blue background and icons in EBS, this is a feature that's available in EBS for a while now, and you can enable it. You can have your homepage in EBS rather than the traditional responsibility tree look like this. The responsibility tree is still here, so you can still access it. So what I've done here is I've added shortcuts to the most important functions that I have. But before I click on the shortcut, I'll just show you that I have a new capability, for example, under Payables Manager, which is called Payables Command Center. And I have something similar for Receivables Manager, which is Receivables Command Center, and so forth. So wherever we added those new Enterprise Command Center dashboards in EBS, they become part of your menu tree. You can assign them to whatever user population you want them to have access to this. And I should mention also at the top of the presentation that all of these features are license free. It doesn't require you to license anything. These are just additional usage options, advanced usage options, so to speak, that we are enabling for EBS to give you that additional value of interacting with the system, to make you more productive, and to basically bring modern user interaction paradigms that you see today on the web, to bring it into the enterprise system and give it like a fresh interaction and a fresh user experience. So there's a question, and I'll speak to it just quickly now. So the question was about Indicateurs. So Indicateurs is the predecessor of this. So we started doing this at back in 2012 with Indicateurs as a technology, and we kind of like reimagined Indicateurs, and then we were inspired by the Indicateurs capabilities, but we built Enterprise Command Center from the ground up within the EBS development environment. So there is no dependency on whatever I'm showing here on Indicateurs. And so if you're familiar with Indicateurs, Indicateurs was a technology that Oracle acquired back in 2011, and then a year or so later, we integrated that within EBS. But ECC is inspired. It's trying to deliver to you some functionality that's similar to Indicateurs, but it's not built on top of Indicateurs. It doesn't have any Indicateurs components in it. As a matter of fact, it's the technology framework is owned and developed by my team within EBS as part of the EBS development team. And then we shape this technology and optimize it in a way that we know serves our EBS customer the best. So that's just quickly to answer that. Okay, so I just logged in. As you've seen, I've logged in into eBusiness Suite, and I selected Payables Command Center. So I'm still within the eBusiness Suite interface, but I have this new embedded region within EBS. In this particular interaction, I'm going as a Payables manager. And what I want to do is the system is presenting me with all the data that I have access to based on my access control within EBS. And in this particular case, I have access to multiple ledgers. So I still don't see the financial data because the different ledgers may have different currencies. And I need to have one specific functional currency so I can see the data aggregations correctly. So in this scenario, I'm going to filter by vision operations as one particular ledger. And what you'll see is immediately the system shows me the total open supplier balances, total open employee expenses, any unapplied prepayments that I can take advantage of before I start paying invoices, past due invoices, and then any payments that I've done recently, just to give me a little bit of context. So you'll see from here that the dashboard is focused on making you as an end user in this particular scenario more productive, and focusing on data that requires additional follow-on transactions in EBS. So it's focused on improving the day-to-day activities of the person in the payables department who is responsible for paying the invoices, taking advantage of discounts, making sure that the invoices are validated on time, resolving any discrepancies between maybe the invoice and the receiving documents and so forth. So this particular person will come into the dashboard and they'll see data that is that needs attention, that requires some follow-on action. So in this case, I can see all of my different statuses for the invoices if it needs reapproval. So I can click on that and filter by that particular subset. I can see everything that's approved. In this dashboard also, I can see if I'm late on making payments, and indeed I am. Like I have a number of payments that are in the 90-day and over bucket in terms of not being paid for 90 days past the due date. So I can filter by that. For example, I can click on this blue part of the chart, and what will happen is you'll see any interaction that I do with the dashboard. We keep track of it here in the selected refinement region. You can see I have the ledger, and now I have the operating unit and the aging bucket when I clicked on the chart. And now I have the supplier list basically shown here on the side, and I can decide to also maybe filter by any one of those suppliers. And if I do that, I have the details of the invoices that haven't been paid for this particular supplier, and I can decide to do whatever follow-on action I want. So the idea again is to give you kind of like an open-ended approach for interacting with the data and filtering by whatever attribute that makes sense for you to filter by, and then later on doing whatever transaction makes sense to do post that interaction. Another capability that we highlight here, for example, is discounts. So if you take advantage of discounts within EBS, so if I pay the supplier a little bit ahead of time, maybe they'll give me one particular discount. If I pay them 2 weeks, they'll give me maybe 2%. If I give ahead of time, they give me 2%. If I pay one week ahead of time, they give me maybe 1% discount. So the dashboard also tries to highlight that information to you directly in the dashboard. So I filtered here by this particular ledger. And if I go to discounts, that particular view of the data will still be in context for me when I look at the discount information. And I can look here and see if there are discounts that I can take advantage of. For example, like for one particular supplier, maybe like federal supplier, I click on that, that becomes a filter. And now I'm only focusing on that particular federal supplier invoices. And I can see I have holes in those invoices. So that means they're not fully valid yet. So they're not available for payment, and therefore I will miss out on the discount. So if I wanted to know what are the different holes, I can switch back to the holes tab, and now I'll see the dashboard again reflect that information in the same context. So I've already decided this is the supplier that I care about, this is the ledger, and so forth. And you can see I have a lot of basically line variance issues for majority of the invoices that I get for the supplier. So I can try to see if I have maybe something that I need to take care of for a subset of invoices, or in this case, if it happens to be something that's happening all the time, I need to figure out where the process maybe is not efficient for me, and I want to make sure that the supplier invoices from this particular supplier go smoothly into the validation cycle, so I can take advantage of discounts in the future. So yeah, so effectively what you've seen is the ability to correlate different areas of the system together, look at an invoice, a payment, invoice holds, discounts, all from the same dashboard, and then be able to look at the data from different perspectives and take the right decision to transact on that data in the EBS system. And all of that was done embedded within EBS. I did not log into a separate system. I logged into EBS. EBS presented me with a new menu item, and then based on that, I get access to the same data that I have in EBS, but displayed in a visual format in a richer dashboard that allows different types of interactions. Like as you've seen, I've filtered from the chart, I've filtered from the metric bar at the top. I could have filtered also from the results table. And then every time I do any filtering operation, first of all, we keep track of that. So we tell you where you are in your data navigation. And then on top of that, we re-render all the different components on the UI to reflect that state. This is just at a high level. This is interactive UI built on JavaScript components that give you this interactive, responsive dashboard capability. And then the data itself that you see in the dashboard, it's basically EBS data, but subset of that data from EBS sits within the ECC core engine that allows this interactive response as you navigate through the data. And I'll show more examples of how that interaction happens. So what do you get when we say ECC is available? You can take advantage of it. It's license free. So as long as you have license, for example, for payables or financials, you can take advantage of payables, assets, and receivables command center, and iReceivables command center. If you have a license for procurement, you can take advantage of procurement command center, or iProcurement. We have iProcurement dashboards for the shopping experience. So what does it mean that we have this? It basically highlighted in this slide. So we have, first of all, we have the technology that allows all of this to happen, allows us to build dashboards that are interactive and visual, as you've seen. The second thing is we have content from all the different product areas that I'll talk about throughout the slides that are built and delivered to you, again, as part of ECC, so they're not they're license free. As part of ECC, they're delivered to you, and this content is built by the same product managers, developers, and owners of the different product areas. So, for example, order management UI within ECC, or the ECC dashboard for order management, is built by the order management team. In manufacturing, is built by the manufacturing team, and so forth. So all of this content is part of the delivery mechanism that we call Enterprise Command Center for EBS. As you've seen, it's embedded. It honors the EBS security, both knowing whether you should have access to the dashboard or not. And then when you go into the dashboard, it also restricts your access to the data based on what you have access to from an EBS perspective. And you get a lot of advanced search capabilities and the ability to navigate through the data in different ways every time you interact with the system. It's extensible, and I'll talk about extensibility in a separate section throughout this presentation. And extensibility, what I mean by it is being able to do something above and beyond what we deliver to you out of the box. So I covered this. I keep slides to capture the live demos, so that if you share our slides with somebody else in your organization, they can see the demos. And I'll show a demo of how we can drill down into a transactional UI in a little bit. Okay, so we are live now with ECC v4 as of the end of March. It's basically our latest release, and it grew our coverage massively in terms of the number of dashboards and modules. So we have in every release of ECC, and we release twice a year. That's been our pattern so far. With every release, we enhance and create new functional content. Again, you get that out of the box, and then we enhance the technology itself and add more features and bells and whistles to it. And the last thing is we make it easier to manage, easier to maintain, easier to support. So if we look at the functional content itself, and again, maybe some of you are familiar with ECC in the past. Maybe you've looked at V1, V2, V3. Basically, obviously, we encourage you to always come back and check on the latest that we've released and see if something that you were looking for is now available out of the box. So you can see here, we've invested heavily on adding new dashboards in V4. So the ones that are captured at the bottom of the slides, the 6 modules are net new, like landed cost management, project procurement, lease contracts, quality, and field service and asset tracking. So those are net new modules that integrated with ECC. And then we enhanced a lot of existing dashboards from previous releases, as you can see with the stamp on the UI. So we have around 97 new dashboards, or total actually, dashboards in V4. So similar to the dashboards that I just showed you in Payables. In Payables itself, for example, we have four dashboards, and we have multiple dashboards across the system. And we have something like project procurement, which is effectively a net new functionality in EBS that is enabled by ECC. So it's a functionality that allows you to create procurement plans based on your project tasks, and then monitor the execution of the procurement plan and how it could potentially impact the execution of the procurement of different items for different tasks, and how that can impact the progress of project execution. Okay, and yeah, so in total we have 28 different modules, and across all those modules we have 97 pages that come out of the box. And when I say the pages come out of the box, it's not only the page design that you get, like I showed in payables. We also figure out what data we need to get from EBS to publish within the ECC dashboard. So that process itself and the design of it and how it gets executed, all of that is also delivered out of the box with ECC. So that's at the functional level. From the technology level itself, we invest heavily also in making the technology more accessible, more productive, add more features to it, and so forth. Some of these features that you'll see me demo throughout the slides come from you, from customers coming to our MOS community and requesting additional features. And some of it come from internal requirements for teams that are building dashboards or want to do a little bit more with ECC. So we've invested heavily on the technology side. We implemented 32 different ERs, or actually 34, across 17 different features within ECC. And you'll see those features giving you additional capability that make your end user, as I mentioned, more productive, but also make the product more accessible, especially when it comes to extensibility. And I'll highlight more of that as we go through the slides. Now, a very common question, where can I take advantage of this? So I'm running EBS. Does it work for my EBS release? And this slide pretty much summarizes it. We support EBS 12.2.4 code line all the way up to the latest. And let's say, you have plans to move to 12.2.10, which comes out, later this calendar year. ECC is automatically applicable to 12.2.10 as well. And we've done and architected ECC in a way that makes it applicable to all those different releases at the same time. A common question that we get from customers is, when you release, for example, ECC v3, we released it alongside the release of 12.2.9. So some customers will think that we need a backport process to make it available for 12.2.8 and prior releases from 12.2.9. But actually, from day one, we release ECC. It's applicable to all the releases of EBS, starting from 12.2.4. So v4 is already compatible with all those releases, no backporting on our side required. And then same thing when we, in the future, release v5. V5 will be automatically applicable to all of these releases, plus 12.2.10 when 12.2.10 becomes available. So it's applicable to you. You can take advantage of it as long as you are on any one of those releases. From an ECC perspective, we obviously would love for you to be always on the latest. So if you're starting to analyze the value of ECC for your business users on a prior release than v4, then we definitely highly encourage you to be on the latest. We delivered a lot more functionality and a lot more content, and we'd love for you to take advantage of that. And it's easier for us to support you when you are on the latest if you report any issues. Okay, I'll just quickly show another example of from payables. So I'm gonna here remove the supplier version. And the reason why I wanna show that is this is additional functionality that we added in ECC v4. So a common question that we get, especially on the financials content, is, do you have any coverage for GL? And from a GL perspective, or general ledger, we are taking it from a different aspect. So we are building or investing in building dashboards from a sub-ledger perspective. And we started doing that with payables and receivables in this release. We've had it done in slightly different way for assets, for fixed assets. So what you'll see in this dashboard is the ability to have information that allow you to close your period in a more productive fashion, and maybe give you heads up on things that could cause your closure, right? For your open periods, things that could delay that, or maybe require a good amount of additional effort, manual or whatever, to be able to close that period. So we wanted to start investing in that area to improve your productivity doing period close. So this is our first dashboard that caters to that. And as I said, we have a corresponding dashboard similar to that on the receivable side. And what you'll see here is immediately my high-level view of what's happening in my system. I have 10 open periods, I have some unaccounted events, I have draft accounting, I have some accounting errors, and I have untransferred journals. So from the start, I know that I need to take care of a few items before I can close the period. So imagine this was only for one single period, and this is, you know, maybe the last week in this period where I want to make sure that everything is lined up so I can easily close my period. So I'll start basically drilling down into each one of those. So for example, here, if I just click on accounting errors, the system will automatically filter the dashboard to show me only the accounting errors and show me basically the status of that message, and then show me additional accounting details about that entry. In this case, it happens to all be related to payment creation accounting. And I can go back into into my accounting system and try to figure out, you know, what I need to do to resolve those issues. So we're hoping that this will cater to making you more productive in period close. And, you know, obviously, as with every new feature that we build, we look forward for customers giving us feedback on those features and telling us what else they would like to see. So one of the things that we have as a phase 2 of this is to show you the reconciliation picture of this. So being able to compare the account balances between the payable subledger and GL, and same thing for receivable. So we're investing more in future releases in adding more color to this, but we definitely would love to hear from you what other ideas you may have on your end. Okay, and again, I have slides that basically walk through similar examples of that. Actually, let me just show one additional functionality that we added here in ECC v4. So let's say, you know, I'm interested in one particular open period. So maybe I'll focus on maybe not the May open period, the June open period. So I have now a filter state here that says basically vision operations, period close 2020, and this particular period. And now I'm only focusing on, you know, trying to get this period closed. So the first thing that I've done, if you remember, is, or one of the things that I've done is I either look at accounting errors. In this case, I have no accounting errors, but let's go back to unaccounted events. And I do have a few events that have not been accounted for yet in the system, and I need maybe to share that information with somebody in my organization to take care of it. So we added this feature now, which is the export capability of this data. So if I click on that, I get some options. Let's just say I take the default options. So what I got out of that is basically a CSV file that I can now open in an Excel sheet and be able to look at the data outside of ECC, and then effectively share it with somebody else in my organization. Maybe that person is the one responsible for making sure that invoices that are validated are accounted for, and I want to make sure that they take care of that. You can see here, we capture whatever filter state you generated this particular data with. We capture the date of data generation, and then we give you all the line level details of that data so you can share it with another colleague. Another thing that we added is oftentimes you have a particular area that you care about and you want to check it every time you go into the system. So this is this particular, for example, set of filters that I selected. I don't want to, every time I go into the system, select one of these at a time, because this is something that I care about in June. I'm always going to care about anything that has to do with the June open period. So I can save this as a bookmark, or what we call a saved search, and I'm going to just call it June open period AP ops. And this becomes a filter condition now for me. So if I remove this, and let's say this is the first time I come back into this dashboard, it will not have any filter state, it will not have any ledger selected or anything like that. I can just click here in the search box and I can see June open period. And if I select that, it will filter automatically all the dashboard for me for June. So now this is my area of focus for today, or for this month, or for the next whatever, like 2 weeks. And then I can delete it when I'm done with it, or I can keep it, it doesn't matter. But the idea is we give you additional capabilities to be more productive using the UI in general. Okay, so again, like the slides will show you all of that. So as I mentioned, we not only invest in new dashboards like the period close, we also invest in giving you features. I just showed you the saved search and how it works. And we've done it in a way that makes it blend very easily into the UI. We also added the export capability, which I also just demoed. So you can collaborate with other colleagues in your organization on a particular data set. We also added in V4, we've done an effort across the board to have different dashboards highlight descriptive flex field data into the UI. So today, you are most likely using descriptive flex fields across so many areas within EBS. Everybody loves the feature. It's a very flexible feature that allows you to define whatever attribute you want in EBS. And what we've done here is we've taken advantage of that and all of the setup that you've already done in EBS for descriptive flex fields, and we bring that data over to ECC and allow you to interact with it. So here, this is a dynamic set of attributes that's based on how you've defined your descriptive flex fields. In this example, I have context-sensitive segments. So I'm gonna select some context, like claim, for example. And what you'll see is once I've selected claim as my context, automatically the system will highlight the context segments, context-sensitive segments. So here I have claim reason and claim number. This is all data that is in this particular system. So your system will show different data, different segments, and all will be dynamic and all will be automatically interpreted from descriptive flex field setup that you have in your EBS system into ECC dashboard attribute that you are able to drill down into and then navigate just like any traditional attribute. And you can also see it here in the results table. So we have this dynamically showing up in the results table, and then we have it in the what we call available refinement, and you can search by it, which is something that is very neat to be able to do. So here I've filtered by the context value, and I filtered by one particular value in a context field, and I have access to that basically anywhere in ECC. So here I wrote in that words promotional. I can see it here. So automatically we highlight it for you without any setup required from your end. Okay. Let's pause here and maybe talk from a little bit of a technical but a very high level perspective what it takes to be up and running on ECC. So as I mentioned, ECC is license free. What that means is you have a license for functional area in EBS. You can use the corresponding ECC content and the ECC technology for that functional area. ECC is a middleware technology from the back-end side. So it's built using Java. And then from the front-end side, as I mentioned earlier, it's built using JavaScript. And when you set up ECC, you can set it up to be sitting on the same middleware box where you're running your EBS middle tier, or you can set it up on its own box. And how do you decide between those two options is based on capacity planning. And I encourage you to refer to our installation document for how to do capacity planning and for the minimum requirements so that you have a smooth implementation of ECC. And by the way, the requirements from a technical perspective are very reasonable. So it's definitely smaller than your existing middle tier setup, and you can get started with a couple of CPUs and 32 gigabyte of RAM as minimum requirement. And then you can scale it based on our capacity planning guidance in the installation document. So one setup is on the EBS middle tier or a separate tier, and another setup is on OCI. So you may be running EBS on OCI and taking advantage of that capability for move and improve. ECC itself is supported also to run as on OCI side by side to the setup that you may have for EBS on OCI. We've created marketplace images to help you get started on that quickly. So that option is also available to you to take advantage of. In terms of data, I'll just talk about it also very high level. What I mentioned, if you remember during the payables demo, is the data within the dashboard is coming from an ECC store. So the data is stored within ECC in the engine and something we call a data set. And that data comes to us by us building those ETL, extract, transform, and load jobs that read the data from EBS and store it within ECC. We don't read all EBS data. We only read subsets of that data, and that subset is decided based on the design and the value we want to give you from the dashboard. So in the payables case, I'm I care mostly about open invoices, invoices that have discounts, invoices that are on hold, invoices that are not fully paid. And I care about maybe the last 7 days of payments. And in the new period close area, we care about subledger accounting events that are still in flight, that are not part of any closed period. So we deliver that through the same capability as ECC, those content and how we get that content out of EBS. And it's all managed through running concurrent programs. So there are no new tools that you need to know about. You run a concurrent job, and that concurrent job will make that data available to ECC dashboard, and you get the dashboard experience that I showed. Okay, in terms of security and integration, I've shown how it's embedded within EBS. So I log in and I see a new menu entry in EBS, and that menu entry is controlled by the administrator, whether they want my responsibility to see this new link to the command center or not. And you can control it per functional area command center. And then when you go inside the page itself, a lot of data is being displayed, and all of that data will also be restricted by what you have access to. So in the financials example, I had access to 10 ledgers. Another user may have access to 1 ledger. So that's it. That's all they see in the dashboard. And you don't have to do any configuration in ECC for that. You already have that setup in EBS. We read that setup in EBS, and then we enforce it on the ECC side. Okay, so this example here, I want to show that we also are integrated with EBS forms. So in this example, I'm going through assets, and I'm drilling down by the asset location. So here I'm going to drill down by United States. Next, I'm going to drill down by California. And next, I'm going to drill down by San Francisco. So in this example, I'm basically going after assets that are not assigned. And as you know, it's a good practice to make sure that every asset that I have in my company has some ownership, so that, you know, it's accountable, somebody is accountable for it. So in this case, I'm drilling down through the hierarchy. As I noted in the past, the whole UI keeps redrawing itself to show you the level of detail that you're at. So I was at the country level, then the state, then the city, and now I'm at the building level. And now I'm going to click on Office 1. And in this scenario, I care about the unassigned assets. And you can see here the list of unassigned assets that ECC is keeping track of based on the information that's in EBS. What I want to do now is actually assign that asset. So that's the transaction that makes sense to be done right now based on this information discovery session. So I'm going to click on Assign Employee. Assign Employee happens to be a form in EBS. It's not an HTML page. So when I click on that, ECC has the capability to bring up that form and then show the asset that you found in ECC, show it pre-populated in that form. So I don't have to go back and look for it again in the form. I just click from ECC, the form pops up in the right context with that asset already pre-allocated or pre-populated. And then I can say assign. In the case of invoices, I can say pay the invoice. In the case of something invalid, I can say revalidate, or whatever the case happens to be. So this is the first example of how this capability is not standalone capability, it's embedded, and it helps you become more productive transactionally in the system. The other example here is from OA framework, where I can select more than one item. This is a order management UI. So I can say update orders. And in this case, I am on the OA framework HTML page for order management, which is part of the HTML enhancements that were added in 12.2.4 and above. And now I can do whatever transaction I need on this data in EBS. Excuse me. Okay, so let's do, I'll keep this demo here just for the interest of time, and to keep a little bit of time at the end for additional Q&A. So iProcurement Command Center existed for a while. I guess it's not necessarily a command center, it's mostly a new user shopping experience that you get within EBS. So if you take advantage of iProcurement today, this is what iProcurement looks like in ECC. I have the ability to filter by different items in the dashboard, and I can click and see the details of any item that I have in the store that I have access to. So here I'm looking at all the details, and then I can add that to the favorites right there from the details menu. And you can see here, ECC is giving me that yellow confirmation message that my item was added to the dashboard, sorry, to my favorite list. The next thing is we added also the capability to not only do the comparison, but also during the comparison, you may already have decided on what you want to buy. So now even in the compare window, you can highlight the differences and see what's important, what's not important for you to make that decision of buying a particular item. And then when you're ready to buy, you just click on that add to shopping cart. And again, EBS will get that message and then confirm to you on that yellow background that the item was added to your dashboard. So these are additional enhancements that we've added for iProcurement in V4 based on new technology capabilities in ECC. We've added a lot more. If you remember, like I had a slide that showed 17 new features. I just only have, for the interest of time, I only have examples of some of the new features that we added in slides. We've added new capabilities for charting. You can see some of that in assets. You can see it in landed cost management, and you can see some of that also in manufacturing. Okay, so now to another important topic, which is the extensibility dashboard, extending the dashboards for ECC. So everything that I've shown you, you can modify. You can take whatever we give you and then do whatever what we call here a basic flow, which is change the dashboard. You don't change our dashboard, as you know. Typically, when you want to extend or customize what we've done, you take a copy of what we give you, and it's very easy to make a copy of a page in ECC. And after you make that copy, you can make whatever changes and then have that copy become the new dashboard rather than the dashboard that we ship to you out of the box. This is done in these two high-level steps. It's detailed in our extensibility document, and it's something that you do from the browser. It doesn't require any additional tools, and it requires some very light level of training because it's a very intuitive way of doing things, and if we have time, I'll show that. And then the more advanced one is this, which requires a few more steps if you want to publish new data into ECC. So if you remember, I said we give you data, load jobs from EBS into ECC, but maybe one attribute we don't carry, but you care about it to be in the ECC dashboard, then you would do a little bit more work, which is requiring some development effort. Development effort is all skills that you already have, which is PL SQL and SQL. So we don't introduce any new complex tools for ETL. And then once you follow our guidance on how to do that, and it's summarized in the slide, you can publish new data into ECC. We keep enhancing extensibility. We even allow you to extend our security handlers. So we have security handlers that control what data you see in the dashboard, and maybe you want to do something a little bit different. We can do that now in V4. You can also take a look at our dataset design. You can see the metadata from the ECC developer dashboard, but you can also download the data and look at it to see how we structure our dataset. And the last thing is you can upload data. So if you want to customize, but you don't right now have the bandwidth to spend all of the effort of writing new SQL statements or PL SQL procedures, you just want to see a new attribute. If I add it, does it provide value? Is this how I want it to behave? You can actually upload it either through a direct SQL query or even through a file, a CSV upload into ECC, and then you can see the impact of that on the dashboard. And this one here just shows how you would personalize the OA framework UI to show your content that you created instead of our content. So you can do all of this without having to build any new OA framework pages within EBS. You can do it using the personalization feature, which is an excellent feature from OA framework that allow you to replace the content that we ship out of the box with the new content that you created in ECC. Okay, in terms of extending ECC, all of what I mentioned is detailed in a very detailed document, about 100+ pages long, and you can access it from the link here. Again, we share the slides, and it describes every component, how it works, and how you build an ECC dashboard. We have additional capabilities that we added. I'll go through them rather quickly, like the ability to do online data loads. We also added a capability done by our support colleagues to help you analyze if you have anything wrong in your setup for ECC, setup analyzer, so to speak. And then we added also about ECC capability, which allows for you to see the versions of the different applications or the different content areas and dashboards that are deployed in your system, and also see the version of the ECC that you are using. Okay, so with that, I'll try to wrap up. So key takeaways. So the first thing is license-free It's basically an investment by us, the EBS development team, to make sure that our customers are productive and have interactive, modern user experience as they use different areas of EBS. It's information driven, so the navigation that you've seen is going to be different for you because your data distribution is different. So the dashboard will match whatever that data distribution is, and then the dashboard automatically redraws itself every time you select a particular area of focus by selecting a filter from any of the interactive components. And again, the most important thing is all of this is embedded, integrated within EBS. So you set up ECC, but then post that there's no user provisioning, no configuration for security for what data should I see versus not see or any of that, because all of that is inherited from EBS and the whole experience is embedded within the EBS system. We keep investing in doing this. We've done this already for four releases already in the last about a couple of years with 2 releases. Our history has been 2 releases per year with a lot of new content and a lot of enhancements in the functionality of the technology itself. So we'll keep doing that, and we'll keep improving on areas that are consistently acquired across the whole suite. So for example, descriptive flex field, you'll see it in about 80 or 90% of our dashboards in V4 will have descriptive flex fields out of the box implemented. So we keep having functional suite-wide themes that everybody implements across the dashboards that we have. For additional questions that you want to ask us, please take advantage of the MOS community. And also if you have ideas of something that you want us to change or add in the technology or in the content, this is where you do it. The export functionality, by the way, came from the MOS community as an idea that somebody published and people voted on, and then we picked it up and implemented it in V4. Take advantage of a lot of videos that we create. We create videos on EBS channel in Oracle University. They are free and they are done by the owners and the product managers by the different areas. So if you want to know more about period close, you will find a video by Nashwa, who's also on this call, in my team, that describes how the period close functionality is designed, how it works, and how you can take advantage of it. And all of this content is delivered for you for free as part of Oracle University. And the last thing is take advantage of the Quick Start Guide. I'll go quickly back to that. So the Quick Start Guide, when I mentioned, for example, take advantage of the training, if you click on any of those, implement and use online training, which we have for every dashboard, you will get a recorded session by the designers of that dashboard and how that dashboard works. And then for every dashboard, we have an implementation guide and a user guide. So if you're interested in knowing what's in Procurement Command Center, you click on the user guide and you'll see screenshot of all the different dashboards and explanation of what's in every dashboard. And okay, let me just accept this. Yeah, and an explanation of what's in every dashboard and the explanation of how a particular item is calculated and so forth. So take advantage of all this information. All of it is here in the QA guide. Sorry, the Quick Start Guide. Okay, let's see the open questions. So the first question here is, do you have, I'm looking at the Q&A forum first. Do you have feedback on incremental refresh impact on EBS and DB in terms of performance? Yeah, thanks for the question. So the full load obviously is going to be heavier or more resource consuming compared to incremental loads. So just to explain to folks that are not familiar with the terminology, when you set up ECC the first time, let's say I'm this example here, iProcurement, I need to reflect my catalog information, my items in the store inside of ECC. So we call that a full load process because this is the very first time that you're doing it. And we read all of the data that makes sense for us to take from EBS into ECC. And that obviously would require some bandwidth on the EBS database. The bandwidth is dependent on the module that you're running, dependent on some of the control parameters that you may have to say, don't load everything, load only for one particular org, load for one particular status or one particular time frame. So obviously all of that will factor into how much CPU and memory and disk space we may require as we run that data load. We would always encourage that you run the full load in an off period in your system, meaning like don't run it in the middle of your majority of user population. We understand that majority of the systems are 24/7 running, and you have basically employees and users around the globe accessing the system. But I would select the time where it's the least amount of activity on the system to run something like a full load. And then the incremental load is keeping track of the changes that happen transactionally on EBS, and then taking that data and putting it inside of ECC. That's a lighter weight type of module. And we actually have an expectation that you will run it multiple times throughout the day. How many times you run it depends on how fresh you need the data to be. Like, for example, the catalog for iProcurement, I don't really need to run that refresh multiple times a day because the catalog doesn't change that often. But payables, maybe I want to run it, once an hour because I want to make sure that new invoices that come in, or new payments, or new validation issues and so forth are reflected in a timely fashion on the dashboard. So incremental, I would run it a little bit more frequently, and we tune it to make it run in an optimized fashion and to take as fewer resources as it can. If you run into any performance issues, definitely file an SR. We work with customers who may basically run into a performance issue because of their data volume, their data distribution, and so forth. And we've been very good at providing performance tuning wherever a customer runs into an issue on that. And then the other thing I would mention is performance. We take it with a high priority, and it's a continuous theme. In every release, we spend a good amount of effort tuning, and we're doing that again in V5 as well, where we put a lot of focus all the time on tuning and continuously improving the ETL process. So yeah, so I hope that answers your question. Okay, so the next
Mohammed, before you go to the next question, there was a question that has been repeated a number of times about impacting the EBS database and so can you just explain again one more time the ECC middle tier and ECC data store versus the EBS database and the impact or not on that?
Sure, thanks, Nadia. So yeah, so if we go here and look at the dashboard, now everything that I have been doing on the dashboards does not touch the EBS database. So my first answer that I just given on full load and data load, that's the only time where we go and run queries to load data from EBS. So we go and load data during the full load, and as I said, that's an operation that's typically takes a little bit of time because that's the very first time you start up the system. And the incremental load is expected to be a lightweight process where we read data from EBS. Now beyond that, as I'm interacting with the system here, so for example, here I'm interacting with the context values, I'm just showing you all the values in EBS. By the way, if you go to a query screen in EBS, it doesn't show you the existing values. It shows you maybe seed data, but it cannot show you this because this will be a very expensive operation to run on a database, on the Oracle database. Instead, this operation now is all happening inside of the ECC. So when I click on filter by claim, and then I get all the claim numbers and all the claim reasons that match that, basically all of this information is now being retrieved from ECC. And all this process is now, instead of happening through reports or query screens back in the day when you were running those in EBS, those were happening on the EBS database. In ECC, all of the interaction that I have in the dashboard is happening against the ECC middle tier and the ECC engine. And it's done in a way that is architected to efficiently give you this very responsive design, and it does not access your EBS database for any additional data. All of that now is stored inside of ECC. That's why you see this quick response time. And maybe just to highlight this from different perspective, I'll show it again from. Actually, let me just go to MFT. Welcome. Okay, and then if I click on iProcurement. So if you are familiar with iProcurement today, to be able to filter by iProcurement, you have to select a store. So maybe you're buying a phone, you have to go to the phone store. Maybe you're buying a computer, you have to go to the computer store. And you do a search, and I think everybody knows the experience of that search. This is now iProcurement within ECC. First of all, immediately I have access to all the different subcategories of items that I have in the system with the counts. This is not done against the EBS database. This is all happening from ECC. And I can select from here, let's say pen and pencils, or I can search across the board. And let's say I'm looking for a blue pen. I can just say, show me all the blue pens and pencils in my catalog. And all of this activity is now happening within ECC. It doesn't touch the EBS database, and you can see the response time, how fast it was. And this is, again, live demo. And it even shows me additional refinements like point size, like ink color, like, I don't know, barrel color, and so forth. So I have all of these things that I highlight, and all of this is now not happening anymore on the EBS database, as in the existing implementation of iProcurement. Instead, it's happening in ECC, and that's why you see this much better and interactive user experience. Okay. Yeah, Nadia, does that answer your question? Do we have any other questions?
Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks very much. There was a question that is not answered. Any plans for WMS for ECC?
So yeah, we add capability. So if you go back here to our quick start guide, we have inventory and WMS implementation. So let me see where it's at.
Up, yeah.
Let me just search. So look under inventory, and then you'll see a lot of the different things that you need. And if you have any additional questions on how to access that, let us know. But we've already been adding things like receiving an activity, cycle counting is coming next, item information was added in V4. So we have it from under the inventory management command center, but it covers the WMS functionality.
I guess it's fair to say if you have a use case that you would like to share with us, we can always review it and see if it makes sense to add it in as a functionality in ECC beyond the inventory itself. So is that fair to say, Mohammed?
Yeah, correct. That's good. So Nadia, there's a question in French. We're on the open questions. I don't know if you can see it.
No, it's not. No, it's not a question. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. So when accessing the dashboard, the database is not accessed. The data are stored in ECC. Is it like a duplicated database? So it's not a database. It's a data set. And again, let me go back here. And I think I have. So if I go into ECC developer, so this is a new dashboard that we also deliver as part of ECC. To allow you to build pages. If you remember, I said you can extend pages from here, so you can add a new page or you can copy an existing page. But then to your question about where is the data stored, so we have data sets. So let's say, again, to this example of AP, because we highlighted that. So this is the data stored for the installments or the invoices for payables. This is how we load the data into this. So we get the data through a PL SQL procedure. What does the data shape look like? So if I go into my metadata, for installments, I'm just going to type in installments. So if I go metadata for installments, here is all the data that we store in the installments dataset for payables. And this data now is not stored in another Oracle database. It's actually stored within the core of ECC. So if you remember that box that I showed in the slide, which is the ECC middle tier box, within that, we get the data from EBS. We analyze it, we index it, and we store it in a binary format that's only readable by the ECC engine. It's not another Oracle database. And the way we need to do it like that is to provide you with that experience of being able to show you all the values in any particular attribute and give you all that fast response capability that you saw in the demos. Okay. Any other questions that I may have missed, Nadia?
I'm looking which ones that keeps repeating, and I think the one on sizing, and you addressed it at the database, the impact on the database. We had lots of questions on that. And the most recent question came is the mantra something you investigate for ECC? And I responded, it's ECC is limited to EBS modules, and the mantra is not really an EBS module. Right. So it's not within the scope of ECC. Anything else? Nashwa, did I miss something? I don't see anything, Mohammed. It's just
okay.
No, we covered all the questions.
Okay, excellent. So on capacity planning, if you see here in the quick start guide, I have installing Oracle Enterprise Command Center document. If you click on that link and you basically look here, you will see sizing guidelines and basically a formula of how to do sizing for your instance. So I encourage you definitely to look at this and please adhere by the minimum requirements so that you get a pleasant experience with ECC.
A follow-up question from Frank. Beyond the mantra, do we have any plan for the VCP, ASCP scope for ACC? Do you have any follow-up, Mohammed, as a response beyond the mantra, which is obviously not an EBS?
Yeah, there are no current plans for that actually. No current plans for that.
You know, all the VCP, ASCP, they are not technically speaking an EBS modules. They are add-ons, and maybe they use the same technology stack, etc. But they are not really, technically speaking, they are not the core EBS modules.
Right. Okay, so if there are no further questions, thank you again. Thank you for all the questions. This was great and interactive, so thank you for all of that. And thanks everyone for attending. And take advantage of the MOS community, please. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any further questions or comments for additional functionality, we'd love to hear all of that.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you.
Thank you also. Have a good day.
Nadia.
Thanks, Sabine. Thanks, Liliana, Mohammed, Nashwa, and everybody, and all the customers and partners who attended today.